All right. So I want to welcome you to the live chat on attachment styles and anxiety and depression. This is a concept that I am super excited to talk about because I love this theory. And I think it's fascinating how, for those of us who have insecure attachment, like how much relationships contribute to the state of our mental health and anxiety and depression symptoms. The state of relationships in general is a really good predictor of mental health, which I'm sure that you guys all know. And if you have an insecure attachment style, we're going to discuss tonight how this is absolutely something worth working on if you're serious about working on your mental health and the physical symptoms that you get. I like to think of attachment styles as the invisible monster under the bed when it comes to relationships because they can easily be brushed off as that's who I am, but it's not true. And these patterns and behaviors can be fixed if you commit to it. So, I want to start off with a few disclaimers. Number one, you can't blame attachment styles for everything, okay? It's a spectrum. It's not everything, and like not everything about you can be explained by these categories exclusively. You're more nuanced than that, and there's going to be a lot of overlap when it comes to attachment styles and mental health conditions and general personality traits. So that's the first one. Number two, we don't fit into one attachment style box. It is a spectrum. And that's going to make things a lot more confusing. And we're going to learn about this in a few minutes. And number three, anyone who has insecure attachment style, you're going to struggle with your mental health in some shape, way, and form. So if you're here and you think that you are purely secure attached, I'm going to go with probably not. Okay. And that's okay. So even if your test results have shown that you're globally secure, which I kind of mentioned in the preamble before hitting record and going live here. So even if it says that, that doesn't mean that that's the case for every relationship in your life. And there are still areas for improvement. Now, I sent out an email the other day with an attachment style quiz. Well, I gave you three for you to complete before you showed up tonight. I know that those of you that are here live have done those, but if you're watching the recording, hopefully you did those too. I will leave those links for you in the YouTube video in the description at the bottom. Um, if you need a minute to go like plug in your answers because you haven't done it, you can go do that. And then I already know who's here with me tonight. I already know what I'm going to be covering. But if you are coming into the live a little bit late, you can just let me know in the chat right now what attachment style you are, just so that I know who's here with me tonight. Before I went live, it was showing that nobody here tonight is an avoidant dismissive. I'm not buying that. So, like, if you're popping in and that is you, please leave that in the chat so that I don't skip over that section too much. Okay. So, I think I've already set this up all properly that you can see my two graphs and my pie chart here on the screen. And if you did those quizzes, you should have those as well. And before we continue, I want to say one more thing. The reason why attachment styles are so insidious is because they operate off of confirmation bias or a concept that we can call like calls to like. And that means that what your nervous system currently knows is what it's going to look for. So, gathering more evidence to prove its point over and over and re-imprinting every negative or bad pattern that you'd like to repair. And this is why a healing journey can feel so grueling and take so long. And it's why it requires this consistent effort because the nervous system is always going to follow its easiest neural pathways, and switching these beliefs and these worldviews that you have that are coming from a very real, true, foundational feeling place, it's gonna feel like the opposite when you're doing this process. Okay. So without further ado, we're going to break down the different insecure attachment styles so that we can all get on the same page and that we all have the same lingo moving forward. Okay. For all of my anxious people in here, my anxious attached individuals, not people who have anxiety, but my anxious attached individuals. This is going to be the people who find themselves very codependent on other people, feeling like they don't want to be alone or that they always have to be with someone to feel safe and feel good inside of their skin. They're always seeking this reassurance and this validation. Um, Generally, there is a low self-esteem that is associated with this attachment style, and it has to do with the lack of sense of self. It's like the sense of self is being formed by other and how others see you. This category involves all of my people pleasers. You are also super hyper vigilant to changes in tone and body language and people's moods from the perspective of self-preservation. Usually I call it manipulation, but I don't want to say it in this case. It's like you're trying to protect yourself against everything going wrong outside of you. So you need to pay attention to all these details so that you make sure that you don't do anything wrong to swing someone in a different direction because you want it to be predictable. Okay. Like I said before, you don't like being alone. You want to feel very close to people. And there is a tendency and you guys can admit it in the chat if you want to or not. But when you feel like you are trying to be close and you don't get that thing, that you're going to punish the other person by acting out. Whether that means pushing them away or creating an argument to create closeness, whatever it is, you have the desire to feel close. And when you don't get that way, you kind of have a temper tantrum. Even if we want to call it an adult version of a temper tantrum, you still have it. Okay. Those people are also still really big apologizers. So if you go through this entire process, you're still the one at the end of the day being like, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to. It's my fault. I shouldn't have done that. Or you find yourself apologizing for literally everything at any point, even if you've like breathed the wrong way, you walk into a room, you're like, sorry for existing. Like that is my anxious attached individuals. Okay. There is also a tendency for very intense attention seeking behaviors. Okay. This is not something to be ashamed of. It is just something to be honest about. And tonight is, I mean, always with me. I want you to be very honest with who you are so that you are able to come to these realizations so that you can create change. But this is like a full honesty zone. I want you to be honest about the ugliest versions of yourself so that we can get down to the root of this and how to start creating change around that. So a lot of attention seeking behaviors happen with the anxious attached style individual. They're very focused on that external environment, like I told you before. There is this sense of abandonment, like you are going to leave me. Why do you keep leaving me? What did I do to deserve that? How am I supposed to be changing myself so that people stop leaving me? That is a huge narrative that runs through the anxious attached mind. There is a lot of over analyzing that happens. Okay, like your mind is going a million miles a minute trying to figure out and like over explain how A went to B, went to C, and how each action caused this entire plot. And you look like a detective with red string at the end of the night, 5 coffees in, being like, I don't understand how this happened. Like that is the anxious attached individuals, okay? And inside their head, there is this core belief that something's wrong with me, I'm not lovable, and I'm not worthy. Okay? So if that is you, and you already told me before I went live tonight that you are an anxious attached and that is how you scored in all of those tests that I sent out, write in the chat right now. Give me a big fat yes. If you feel like a lot of those things when you look deep down, you're like, mm-hmm, that's me. I mean, hi, hello, it's me. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Hey, my little anxious is. I feel for you guys. I mean, you're about to feel for me so soon because you're looking at my chart on the screen. And we're about to talk about the two biggest placements in my charts. So the second one of the insecure attachments is the avoidant dismissive. Okay. For those of you that had any education on anxious versus avoidant or any insecure attachment styles, as an anxious attachment, you're looking at this one being like, stay away. Okay. We get this like really bad rap for like being this cold, callous, closed off individual. And hopefully, I'm going to expand your mind on how you see these individuals and how you engage with them. So, my avoidant dismissives take longer to connect. They tend to have the sensation of feeling trapped and stifled in any sort of relationship. It doesn't have to be romantic at all. They really don't like clinginess. So that would be why if you are an anxious and you've been in any sort of relationship with an avoidant, that they might make you feel annoying. So they don't like that, which is why it becomes more amplified in a relationship. They are hyper independent. They see complaining as a weakness. They tend to, in conflict, do a lot of stonewalling. So, like shutting down, walking away, not wanting to engage. They tend to have a higher self-esteem than the anxious attached. The emotional intimacy that is involved in any relationship, so whether that be romantic, whether that be friendship, whether that be familial, all of that feels like a threat. Like being open and connected is a threat to them. There's a lot of emotional suppression, so much that they sometimes don't even know that they're feeling it at all in the first place. And these people are critical thinkers. They really minimize feelings and they're very solution oriented. Um, and they do focus their sense of self and their self-esteem on like tangible things and their success. So like being good at work, having a skill, having mastery. They're less of the right brain and they're more of the left brain individual. And the core belief that circulates inside their mind is, I'm not enough, I'm broken, I'm weak, I'm powerless, I'm stuck, I'm trapped. And at the end of the day, it's this sensation of I can only rely on myself and others are the things that are making my life hard, right? So from an anxious attached, it's others not capitulating to what I need makes my life hard. Others not wanting to do what I want them to do makes my life hard. And from an avoidant, it's like, I don't even want anything to do with that because they're just going to make my life hard. There's no point in me even trying to get that thing. No one's going to be able to meet the standard that I have. Therefore, I'm going to curl into my shell. Okay. If I have any of you in here that are like, that does sound like me, even if you didn't answer it in the survey at the beginning, drop that in the chat right now. Because sometimes it takes a little bit more of like that colorful picture to be like, oh, like that makes sense, or where that can take a place in my life, if it's in friendships or if it's at work. Or if it's in my family unit, right? Or maybe some of you have a score like me, where maybe your global or your universal attachment style is one thing, but then you look in one corner, and as you guys can see in my top left corner, my red dot, which is my connection to my maternal figure, is extremely avoidant in the very top left corner over there. Okay. So this is how I will engage very often when it comes to just being close to people in general, when it comes to nurturing in relationship. So something to think about. Okay. Now, the third one is your disorganized attachment style, which it seems like from the poll that there's a good number of you in here that have that. So, hello and welcome to the club. As you can see on my chart up here, I have my fearful avoidant attachment, which is our disorganized. And then this exists for both my father figure and my partner figure. So in romantic partnership, I exhibit this attachment style, and in paternal relationship, okay? Let me know if I screwed up the background of the screen or if you can still see what you need to see, because I've dragged it and moved it so that I can see it as well. We're good? Give me a thumbs up in the chat if it's still good over there. So this would be my biggest attachment style before I worked on anything. We are definitely the more misunderstood individuals in the crew. So if you're here and you're listening, or if you are watching the replay after this, I'm here with you. I get it. And hopefully we're going to bring some light to understanding this attachment style a little bit better. The hallmarks of this attachment style is being inconsistent and hard to predict. One day we can show up being like, yeah, I love you. This is great. And the next day we're like, get the fuck away from me. Okay. We love to get close. So these people don't have a difficult time entering into relationship in any shape, way, or form, even if that person has let them down, right? So if we go family or friend or romantic partner, we're capable of wanting that closeness. But then sometimes when we're in there, we're like, I don't like this at all. I gotta go, right? And it is this constant push and pull and hot and cold and on and off. And this is trauma related, okay? Sometimes I check my attendance to see if my parents are in here watching my lives, and I didn't go through that tonight, so hopefully that they're not here so that they don't have to sit through this shit show. Just kidding. But it is trauma related. Usually it has to do with neglect, abuse. Um, Most often, I'm never going to give you a rule and say 100% of the time, but I am going to say 99% of the time, any of my patients with addict parents end up in this category. Okay? So if you have an addict parent, if you had an abusive parent, if you had a neglectful parent, if you had a chaotic household where there was a lot of fighting and yelling and absolute just disorganization emotionally and just straight dysregulation, you are going to fall into this category. Okay. It starts in childhood from fearing that attachment figure because they are an unsafe parent. And how it shows up in romantic relationships and friendships is there can feel like there's hate and also love. And it's very confusing. It's like you're always confused in your relationship. So when I say relationship, I just want you to broad stroke it. It's like you can see the good things, you can see the bad things, and you're like, I can't escape this chaos. I just have to keep feeding into this hamster wheel. Okay? That is what it'll feel like. Now, these people are very hypervigilant, like the anxious attached. But it's not coming from the perspective of, I need to control the environment around me, so to speak. It's less about, what do I need to see so that I can change my behavior to get what I want? It's more, I don't fucking trust you. Okay? It's this looking around of being like, none of this is predictable, therefore I can't trust it. Okay? These individuals are very controlling. Hello. Okay. We feel unworthy of love. Okay. We are untrusting. I'm saying we because now you're in my family. Okay. We are untrusting that even when our partners or friends or family members, but like they show love, we're still looking at it and being like, I don't know if I even trust that action of love. Like we're predicting that there's going to be a rejection or that there's going to be a discrepancy or that the shoe is going to drop. And even if the person is really consistent on the other side, we're like, I don't even know if your intentions are right here. Okay. So if that is something that you can relate to, you can hop into this category as well. We do a lot of self-sabotage. There is a sense of not being able to settle your own emotions. So don't think about where you are now, but like think about how you've lived your life maybe before you were 25, where you're like, wow, I have no fucking tools. I'm so uncomfortable inside my skin. It's like everything's a giant roller coaster and you can't settle yourself. It's like if you're craving sugar, you're like, I want sugar. And then you have the sugar and you're like, I don't want fucking sugar. I want salt. And then someone gives you salt and you're like, I don't want fucking salt. I want sour. It's like you can't get yourself into the place where a regular person with a secure attachment style, or maybe even the other two attachment styles, will feel settled once they've had that need met. It's almost like an impossible zone that can't be filled. Okay? They get stressed and then they feel rejected. Okay? So that is a big hallmark or a big sign of being in this category. And usually it comes down to not having very good repair when you were being raised. Okay, there's a lot of conflict without repair. So you were left alone to kind of figure this out for yourself. Um, and this category is very susceptible to mental health conditions. So I don't know if when you guys did your tests, if you have like these two charts, if any of yours were in the area code of like the disorganized. You might not be globally disorganized, but did any of you have some percentage of it in the disorganized, whether it be in your pie chart that you did or whether it be in the other two graphs? Can you drop that in the chat if that was you? Yeah. So you might not be like, holy shit, disorganized, but you might be like, okay, interesting. I have that thing, that whatever that thing is from my childhood, it now exists and it is creating maybe more anxiety and depression based on that level of attachment. Okay. So the thing about this category and the reason why I'm spending more time here is because it is more confusing. Okay. what will happen often is these individuals will, before they do an attachment test or while they're doing the attachment test, they're like, wait, I don't understand. I'm anxious and I'm avoidant. I have both of these things. I don't really understand how these are coming together. Or like when you hear me talking about anxious and avoidant, you sat there and you're like, wait, I have both of these things. Okay, so this would be a mixed type category. Okay. First, there's going to be the anxious attachment, and they're going to be wanting to seek out connection. And then the second that they feel vulnerable, they're going to be like, nope, I don't want this anymore. And it can look like you're switching from anxious to avoidant. But I also have patients who are avoidant first, and then in the privacy of their own mind, like they're acting avoidant, but on the inside, they're like, but I just want to connect and I just want that. And it's like happening in the other direction. And that's very confusing for those people. I would say in the first scenario, those people are a lot more frustrated. And then in the other scenario, those people are very lonely. Okay. So if you're listening and digesting and you're like, that tracks, that makes a lot of sense. That could be you. There is no like 100% rule, like I said before, but specifically for this category, it's as chaotic as the category is itself, which is perfect. There's a lot of high achievers that fall into this category because of this sensation of unworthiness. And there's a lot of over controlling because they don't trust the environment. So it's this like high achieving perfectionist style zone. Um, a lot of self betrayal, a lot of poor boundaries, a lot of lying, and like lying to preserve themselves and have control, but also because they're afraid. And a lot of people in this category go like this: I'm fine. I'm good, I'm fine. Like you won't know that it's happening under the surface. They look and talk and move like a regular person. They quack like a duck, they move like a duck, they dance like a duck, and then underneath they're just like, okay. So that this is really trying to paint you a good picture here because I think more people fall under this category than they might even know. Okay. They also tend to be very self-aware and then very dissociated from their experience and their emotions, which is why they're capable of saying, I'm fine, I'm strong, I can do this. Okay. They don't want to fail. They're going to put other people's needs ahead of theirs so that they feel more comfortable putting in the work to get the results. And that's something that I can resonate with a lot. I would much rather have someone else's skin in the game that I'm working so hard for to make their life better than do it for myself. Because if I do it for myself and I fail, then I'm going to have to buy into that core belief of what the fuck is wrong with me, right? They tend to believe I am unsafe. I can't trust anyone or anything. And there is something inherently wrong with me. Okay. I'm broken. I'm not good enough, which is similar to the other category of avoidant, but it's a lot more emotional. Okay. I have this core belief in this category where because I don't trust anyone, um, prior to working on myself, I would believe people are selfish. Like I had this worldview. People are selfish. They're always going to choose themselves first. I will be abandoned at all costs because people are always doing something for themselves. I don't actually matter. Okay. And I think that that's a perfect example of getting under the surface and going a little bit deeper into these core beliefs. And I also believe that I would be punished no matter what. And that is still a huge core belief that I hold that no matter what I do, I will be made out to be wrong. Therefore, what's the point? Okay. Now, I need you to remember that you are still a human and not all of these categories are going to be 100% accurate for you. Like, you might be resonating with a few different of these categories right now, and that's okay. It's natural. It's supposed to happen. It makes total sense. And what you can see from even looking at my results and then hopefully looking at your own is that you can be in all these four different categories in your life depending on who you're engaging with. Okay? And let me be very, very clear here. Anxiety does not equal anxious attachment, okay? Depression doesn't equal avoidant because those are like people that isolate. Both have the same wants and desires and needs, and that is connection at the end of the day, okay? It's about how we go about it that is different. The difference in the attachment styles is in behavior. It's not in what we're thinking inside of our mind. Okay. The cortisol that's happening in the body and the nervous system dysregulation is the same that's going on at every single person's foundation. And I'm going to give you an example so that it's clear. Okay. You heard me mention a few core beliefs in each of those categories. But I want to also be clear about something else. Those are just common ones that individuals in each category are going to report. Okay. And that doesn't mean that it's the only area that it's going to come up. So if you're like, oh, I feel unlovable and unworthy, those are my core beliefs. That doesn't mean that you fall into anxious attachment. They can span over all these attachment styles. Like not feeling good enough isn't exclusive to avoidant dismissives, and having trust issues isn't exclusive to disorganized attached individuals. The same way that not feeling safe, that applies to every category. Like that's why you're in an insecure attachment. At some point in your development, you're like, I am not safe. Someone is not meeting my needs. I am not safe. Okay? And I want you to see that everyone who has insecure attachment, we're all having these same core beliefs at the foundation of it, okay? What we want is to feel connection, and your attachment style has less to do with how you feel and more to do with how you go about getting it, which is what I just said before. So let me give you the example. An anxious attached individual may be very outward and verbalize that they want their needs met and state they're insecure, and then they become clingy and annoying to receive the attention that they want, okay? They're doing this out of fear of being rejected and abandoned. An avoidant, dismissive attached individual may feel all of these desires, okay, entirely inside. They also at the same time might be disgusted with themselves for thinking this because they have an inherited belief that they're going to be rejected at the end. So it's not safe to communicate what's happening inside of them. And what they do is they behave by pulling away to avoid the interaction entirely. Okay. Both of those attachment styles are afraid of rejection and abandonment. One is grasping on for dear life for self-perceived protection, and the other is running for the frickin' hills for that self-perceived protection. Okay? Both of them want love and connection. The anxious sees that threat as self. Okay? What am I doing wrong that you won't give this to me? And the avoidant sees the threat as other. You'd reject me if you actually saw who I am. There is something wrong with me. I need to hide by making you think that you're the problem. Okay? And imagine that we live in a world where most people aren't self-aware enough to understand what's going on within themselves, right? Like that is a fucking disaster. It's like a pure relationship disaster. Okay? I can imagine that not everyone here knows that that's going on within themselves, right? Like if you just had an aha moment, can you type in aha in the chat so we can see that like not everyone is so fully healed, self-aware, and like working these steps, so to speak, in a relationship. Again, whether that be romantic, friendship, family, with your dog, I don't give a shit. Okay? This stuff is happening under the radar. Not all of us are aware of it. Now, before I move on from this quick section about core beliefs, I want you to understand that all of these are positive feedback loops where you're re-imprinting these beliefs in the nervous system. You believe these things and you are constantly looking for information that reinforces these concepts, and you end up choosing behaviors that create a self-fulfilling prophecy. Another quick example of that is an anxious attached will think, I'm not lovable, okay? While being, I don't mean to trigger you guys right now, but it's coming. You feel, I'm not lovable, okay? While you're also being the most clingy, annoying person on planet Earth, and you're seeking out constant reassurance, okay? Of course, along the way, someone's not going to be able to fill this never-ending cup, and eventually they're going to snap at you and tell you to fuck off. Okay? And that might leave you feeling unlovable, right? And the same thing happens with avoidance. They're going to think, I'm not good enough, and I can only rely on myself, while completely isolating themselves and proving the point that they don't show up and do better alone. Like if we look at the disorganized, attached individuals, they're going to think I'm unsafe. What's wrong with me? Well, their behaviors are enough to drive anyone into insanity because they're constantly swinging from side to side and then driving themselves into emotional dysregulation without anyone being capable of helping them, let alone themselves. right? So of course they're going to think there's something wrong with me and I'm unsafe because they can't trust their internal experience. In each scenario, your behaviors are going to reprove your imprinted beliefs about yourself. So we have to change the behaviors that you are so accustomed to in order to break this cycle. Does that make sense? Can you give me a thumbs up or a yes if you're like, mm-hmm. I can see how I'm thinking something and that's turning into a feeling and then that's turning into a behavior and I am perpetuating this never-ending cycle and being like, see? The proof's in the pudding. I'm not lovable. I'm better off alone. Oh my God, I can't trust anyone. No one can meet my needs. It's like you're proving it to yourself because you're not willing to change your behavior. And you're sitting there pointing fingers at everyone else, being like, heh, heh. Well, like, yeah, I get it when you're 2, and I get it when you're 8, but now you guys are like 20s, 30s, 40s. It's like tick tock on the clock, guys. It's time to change the behavior, right? So clearly, you know that I believe that the answer to all of this is learning how to be emotionally intimate and honest with yourself. But that is a long road when you are starting with a cracked foundation and technically having to reparent your way through this entire experience. Like, it is unfortunate, and I'm sorry to say, but like, it is our responsibility to heal this. We don't get to blame our mommy and daddies. We don't get to blame our caregivers. It's just what happened, and now it is in our hands to make these choices and make these changes. And you are very capable of change because you all have brain cells that you can rub together. Okay? So it is not solely on everyone else's shoulders in your life to meet your needs, because not only is that impossible, it is a never ending hole. And if you have an insecure attachment, there is this insatiable feeling to get an imaginary need met. And like you're trying to change it in your nervous system, okay? Because nothing's ever going to be good enough when you're receiving it from someone else, okay? You don't feel safe and trusting at your core. And unfortunately, our brains are wired for that confirmation bias and proving our previous stories, like I already told you. They're not willfully taking in new information and trusting it from other people. So, like, let's say you have a new friend come into your life or like a new partner come into your life, and they're like, you can trust me. I'm going to prove to you that I'm consistent and like I'm going to show up for you. It's like you think your attachment style is still not going to show up. It's the way you see the world. It doesn't matter how good that person is. That person would have to try so hard to start changing your attachment style to help you see things differently. And you would have to literally be doing the work together, creating change, and then re-imprinting that in your brain and still believing all the core beliefs that you have and the foundation that you have and all of the worldviews that you have, while also having the cognitive weight at the same time and being like, okay, I recognize this is my childhood. I recognize this is the logical present. I can still feel this while thinking this at the same time. And that is the ultimate goal. Okay? But that is really hard to find two people. One is like really ready to do the work, and the other one's ready to fully guide you and walk you through everything. Like, think about how rare that situation really is, right? So that's why you have to be in charge of your own personal work. And when you fill your own holes, like you're in control. And I think that all of you like being in control because you have that tendency about you. While I'm on this topic, I want to say that I don't like the messaging out there that you need to cut out toxic people, or just like in general, people who don't meet your needs. Okay. Like I said, just right now, it's not entirely fair to expect them to do that. And it's also not fair to yourself. Okay. Remember, I said at the beginning that like calls to like? Yeah. So that means that you naturally are going to be attracted to other people with insecure attachment. And that's not a bad thing. It's made out to be a bad thing all over social media and like even in psychology books that I've read. Like some of the really popular ones are just like ragging on different attachment styles. It's like, stop doing that. I have this belief that you can't heal or work on your attachment wounds unless you're in the heat of your triggers. Okay. These wounds are a part of you. And if you heal them in isolation, you're going to get unbelievably frustrated when they start to come up when you are activated by someone who triggers your attachment style. And I think it's way better to prepare yourself for the challenges of life and to learn to manage and work with them when they're present than to remove every inconvenience and hope that, oh, I hope my attachment style never rears its ugly head again because I've removed everything bad from my life. Okay. Like, that's where I see a lot of people making mistakes on their mental health journey. They've cut out everyone who poses as a threat or an inconvenience. And because their life got easier when they did that, they think that they've healed, right? So they're hiding under this label of calling this boundaries, but sometimes we need to have consistent triggers present to know that our self work that we're doing is, in fact, doing its job and working. And plus, we need the real time practice of those triggers to use our tools and then change the neural pathways and the worldviews and beliefs that we have, right? Without the triggers, we can't actually change anything, right? So that is where I differ from a lot of the mainstream mental health advice out there. Like, cut this person out, get rid of this person. If someone can't meet your needs, you shouldn't be with them. It's like, why are we putting all this stuff in one basket? Like, why are we not looking at the root of the problems? And it makes me feel, and this is a really bold statement, but like, what the fuck is new with me? It makes me feel like these people that are giving this advice are not actually living with their triggers and doing their fucking work and showing up as real life human beings and having the triggers and actually regulating their nervous system and being capable of being so stressed and being capable of maintaining difficult relationships. Like, that's the measure of actual health. It's not taking out every inconvenience and being like, look at me go, I'm so great. It's like, no, you're fucking not. Okay? Let's think of this so simply. If you are, let's say, let's use an alcohol addiction as an example, not to trigger any of you, but like it's so easy, okay? Is an alcoholic strong and in recovery if they have to stay at home and hide from anyone who's drinking? No, right? That would be at the beginning of recovery. It's like first you need to deal with your own shit, sure, because it's addiction and it's a little bit different than what we're talking about, but you have to be a well-integrated human being in society. You have to go out and be able to be at a party. You have to be around other people who are drinking. You have to be able to enter a restaurant. Otherwise, are you healed? No, you're not, right? So that's where I say like live within the chaos. If your nervous system likes chaos and wants chaos, it's like, okay, bring it on, but do it responsibly, right? I don't want to live a boring life. Look at my chart. I wasn't meant to end up with someone securely attached. I was with someone securely attached once, and after 2.5 years, I was like, oh, I needed something more, right? I wanted to be able to handle chaos, but do it in a more productive way, right? We don't get to remove our triggers and then think that we're healed. That was the messaging there. Maria gave me an amen, so I'm going to give it a amen, okay? Let's talk about what we need to do to actively work on this sort of thing and what tools are going to be the most helpful because I think that is going to be the most important part of tonight. Yeah. You're going to hear a lot of professionals say that you have to come up with reasons why these thoughts that you're having aren't true. Have you guys heard that before? Yeah. Where it's like, you need to tell yourself that, you're not abandoned. You are lovable. It's like, okay. I'm gonna keep repeating this thing that I don't believe over and over again and pray that somehow I brainwash myself into believing differently. It's not how it works. Okay? And it might start that way for some people, but like it's definitely not the end of the road. You have to do some serious neural rewiring with each current experience you are having. Okay? And I see a lot of my patients get frustrated in this process. You can't will yourself into submission by saying, don't be anxious. Okay. Don't think like that. It's not true. You can't force yourself into disproving a core belief that is literally how you see the world by disagreeing with it or by looking for proof of the alternative, right? And I will give you an example of that. Because if it was that simple, that you could just be like, I'm not lovable or I'm not worthy, and then you just look for proof in your life where you're worthy, okay? Let's say you guys are like, okay, I'm not lovable, I'm not worthy, I'm not safe, I'm not good enough, whatever it is, okay? Can you find reasons why that's not true? Like logically, you could come up with things, right? You'd be like, okay, I made my bed today. I'm good enough. Like it doesn't matter what it is, right? Where you go is where you are. And the core belief that you have in that moment of even like picking the thing that's going to refute it, you're going to be like, I don't think that it holds enough weight. You're gonna dismiss it. You're gonna be like, yeah, but this feeling feels so real. It's like this evidence is shit. It doesn't matter if you could come up with 20 reasons why you are worthy and lovable and good enough. It doesn't matter. If you don't believe it, logically, you can't just be like, okay, because I have this evidence, I now believe the opposite. Not how it works. Okay? If that was the case, you wouldn't have the core belief in the first place, if I'm being like really, really frank. But then I also have people who are incapable of this flexible thinking, where they're like, I can't even find a I can't even find a valid, refutable point as to why I'm not that thing, right? And then we have to take an entirely different route. Okay? So this is why I'm all about action and behavioral change in the present moment. And like I don't want you guys sitting there always working from the logic part of your brain, because the logic part of your brain is only so good until it's done. And if you can still disagree with yourself, you're still going to do the actions. You're still going to be on that cycle. You're still going to keep doing the shit that you do to reinforce the belief. And then we still have the problem. Okay. So this is how I work with my patients by using nervous system tools. Initially, mindfulness, for those of you that practice, this is going to be very helpful. First, you're going to practice it in very simple situations where you're like, oh, like I see this, I hear this, I feel this. It's like, if that's the way that you're practicing mindfulness right now, like you're in grade 1. Congratulations. We need to get to like grade 12, okay? We need to start practicing mindfulness in the present moment when you are triggered. What is happening? What caused the trigger? What cognitive distortion is there? What core belief has come up? What evidence are you using to refute that? What patterns are you now starting to partake in? What's the unmet need that my body's having right now, or my nervous system is having right now, that is causing me to act like that crazy person on the chart of anxious attachment or avoidant attachment or disorganized attachment? What behaviors am I doing that I can now see? Okay? I don't have to stop it yet. I just have to see that I'm doing it. Okay? And I don't need to go in a shame spiral of how shitty of a bad person I am that I'm doing these things. No, no, no. You just have to see that you're doing it. Okay? What's the unmet need? What are you not getting from other in relationship where you're like, shit, I'm doing that fucking weird ass behavior that's gonna make me look like a crazy person, that's gonna perpetuate the cycle one more time, right? So can you identify it? What's that thing that you're not getting? Now, can you brainstorm how you're going to get that need met by yourself that has nothing to do with the other person? If you're someone who seeks validation and you're like, I just need to hear it from them, it's like, no, you don't. Where else can you seek validation? How can you make yourself feel good? What's the feeling of validation? Is it the feeling of being held? Is it just hearing the words? Is it mastering the action? Is there something you can do where you're like, ah, I've succeeded at that? That's validation. Is it instead of asking for the shit that I need, maybe I need to just go in for a hug, right? If it is, wow, I just need to be held right now, maybe I go grab your dog, right? Whatever it is of like, oh, what is underneath the need? What do I need? Do I need to call a friend right now instead of berate my partner into telling me that I'm pretty for the 100th time today? This is just an example. I know that only applies to a few of you, but it was an easy one. It was low hanging fruit. Okay. So instead of putting pressure on others, how can you attend to that need yourself? You have to give back to yourself what you didn't get as a kid. It is not other people's jobs. Hold on, I'm going to choke and die 1 second. It is not other people's jobs to go, oh, you're anxious attached. You're avoidant attached. You're disorganized attached. Let me change all of my behaviors to work around your deficiencies in your life. What do you think that's going to lead to? Resentment, frustration, not wanting to be around that person, higher stress in the relationship, feeling like they're walking on eggshells. You don't want that, right? What you want is love and connection, right? So if you want love and connection, that means you need to start meeting that need that you didn't get met as a kid. And recognize that that is an insatiable hole. I've said this like 3 times tonight. It can't be filled. For those of you that have like I'm gonna go with the anxious attached because I know that more of you in here were anxious attached from the beginning. Okay, let's say every morning you want your partner to say good morning to you. Okay, is there ever an amount of good mornings that's gonna make you feel good enough? Or is that one morning that the person misses it, you're gonna be like, oh no, right? You're gonna spin, spin, spin. So it's if this person capitulates to everything that I need, then I'm fine. In some instances, yeah, your partner can give you what you need because they need to meet some needs as well, of course. But do they have to meet every need and every time? And is there a consequence if they don't? Right? That's something to self-reflect on. So you need to find a way to fill some of those needs by yourself so that the partner is not always under pressure or the friend is not always under pressure. Okay? For an anxious person, that means that when you were a kid, that you didn't get the self-assurance and the confidence to make your own choices. You were probably raised by a parent who was like constantly telling you what you needed to do, or they were helicoptering over you, or they, were attentive, 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 and then like, exploded in your face, and you were like, ah, like, what did I do wrong, right? Like you don't feel safe making your own choices. You're the kind of person who has to call all of your friends before you do something. Before you like take a shit, you're like, I need to tell everyone, did I take a shit right? It's like that is because you grew up not being self-assured. So where can you find self-assurance? Where can we build confidence, right? You have to, and I'll get to this in the next part, but you have to stop those types of knee-jerk reactions because if you keep doing it, we're going to keep having the same problem, okay? As an avoidant, when you were in your childhood, you might have lacked this expressing of yourself, right? Like you don't feel safe experiencing emotions. So how are you going to meet this need, right? It's not, I just need to be with someone and like only have friends who like don't talk about emotions. It's like, no, you need to start giving yourself that space to experience and feel your emotions. So what if it's scary? Boo hoo, right? We out here feeling things. You gotta join us as well. Okay. Disorganized attachment, you might have lacked emotional regulation and stability and being understood and trusting yourself and feeling safe in your body. It's like, how are you going to give that back to yourself? Right? I can think of a lot of ways to become emotionally regulated and to get into your body and to be understood by communicating differently and by being more consistent and stable in how you show up for yourself. Okay? So many ways. So, in all of these instances, I want you to self-reflect on your knee-jerk reactions of the things that you do. And you can journal it. Maybe you like spend the next week going through this stuff and being like, whoa, okay, that's my knee-jerk reaction to that thing. When I have a friend who hasn't messaged me back in a certain amount of time, I go check the conversation to see if they read the message. Oh, I noticed that when someone is feeling something, that I shut down and I leave the room if someone wants to have a conversation with me or if they start talking about something emotional. Or maybe you're like, whoa, disorganized, attached. And, when I'm in conflict, I get so emotionally dysregulated. And then I try and pull a person in. But then when I don't get what they want, I push them away. But then I secretly want to pull them back in. So I start doing things. And then I get angry with them because it's like, whoa. Okay, you have to see what the knee-jerk reaction is that you're doing. That is going to come from being mindful and having the emotional intimacy with yourself to say, I'm going to be vulnerable and I'm not going to judge myself. I'm just going to start noticing what the pattern is that I do. Right? Find your patterns. Find the weird shit that's taking up your time. Find the stuff that's making you emotional. Find the things that are making you go into this belief of this always happens. People always do this to me. I always feel this way, right? Like instead of taking that victim mentality, be like, okay, what am I doing initially before I even start feeling that thing? Okay. That's going to be the thing that you remove. You're going to start removing the middleman. Okay. Because once you're able to observe when you're stuck in the cycle of doing the patterns, then you take these tools to not follow the knee jerk reaction. Okay. So I've broken this down right now and said, okay, mindfulness, catch it, self observation. Then you're going to brainstorm what's going on. Then you're going to start journaling, writing down, maybe just taking mental notes. What's my knee jerk reaction? Okay. I'll use myself as an example. If I am in conflict with my husband, my knee-jerk reaction is remove love, remove affection, need to protect myself, batten down the hatches. Okay? That's the way that I engage if I'm feeling vulnerable. Okay. So what I would be doing is saying, okay, knee jerk reaction. That's going to then cause my entire disorganized attachment cycle. I'm going to start doing this push and pull, this in and out, this hate love, this mental fucking chaos. Instead of that, what do I have to do? Can you guys see the clear answer here? I would have to say, ooh, shit. I'm going to have to regulate myself enough that I'm going to have to engage in repair right now. And if I'm withdrawing and pulling away to punish, then I need to now close that gap and engage in physical touch and just fucking hold his hand, right? To me, I'm like, the world is ending. But when you look at it this way, it's like, so obvious, right? Go against the knee jerk reaction. Pull away. Fuck. Not allowed to do that because I'm holding myself accountable to healing my attachment wounds. Shit. I have to go do this. Lean in. Okay. When you start leaning into the places where you're going opposite to your knee jerk reaction, you are going to disprove the theory. I can't trust this person. I can't, feel safe around this person. It's like the second that my husband holds my hand, all those thoughts in my head are like, that's not really fucking true at all, right? You were going to perpetuate it by doing the other thing. Because if I start withdrawing, then he's going to go into his bullshit cycle too, right? If I connect, it's like, holy shit, he's going to show up for me and connect back, right? So it's interesting to watch that happen where it's like the 3 minutes of discomfort that I have to experience, right, is actually going to allow me to see a different worldview, a different perspective, and slowly start to patch up the core wound that I have, right? Because now I don't fully believe it, right? You can see if we look, I don't know if the my charts are still behind my head right now. I have no idea what this page looks like on your side. But like you can see where my partner, so where it says P in my fearful avoidant area is, not that bad. Okay. It's like literally hovering on the cusp of a line, right? Initially inside, what it wants to be is probably way closer to my dad. Okay, in the father section, it probably wants to jack up there and be that. But because of the work that I've done on myself, it's like, I can feel the knee-jerk reaction, but I'm like, I don't want that outcome. What I want is love and connection. What I want is peace, not problems. For you that understand that meme, thank you for laughing on the other side. But like, I don't want to engage in that entire emotionally dysregulated cycle because honestly, as an adult who's got responsibilities, it's like, who fucking has time for that? Right? You want to be engaging in that? It just hurts. It hurts you. It hurts everyone else. And this can be said for like friends too. I watch people in their friendship cycles being absolute nutters about this sort of stuff. It's like, just come together, come closer, have the emotional vulnerability, let it go, right? So that was a good example for me putting myself on the barbecue right now so that you can see of that is an aligned action that would be toward healing the attachment wound instead of perpetuating the cycle. Okay, so you have to find out what your knee jerk reactions are in some of these scenarios and say, shit, I have to go directly against that. Okay, I'll give you some examples that are popping up in my head. So, an anxious attached. When you guys get in conflict with a romantic partner or with a friend or a family member, what do you guys do? Does anyone want to out themselves in the chat before I say it? You guys are like, I want to solve conflict immediately. You guys are like sending block texts. You're like calling the other person. You're like, I need to figure this out really fast. I don't want them to hate me. I don't want them to misunderstand. You're trying to solve everything frantically, right? For my anxious attached people in here, when you're in conflict, can any of you admit that in the chat right now? Or like give me a thumbs up on the screen? Be like, I do that. I don't let things sizzle. I need to be in control and fix everything. I'm apologizing right away to stop the conflict, right? So if that's the knee-jerk reaction, it's like, do you have the capacity to regulate yourself enough to put that on ice for like an hour, 2 hours, the end of a workday? Whoa. Like, can you do that? That would be where you'd be holding yourself accountable. And we'll get to the ways that I use tools to do that because it is important. Okay. Now, an avoidant, it's like, okay, you don't want to share your emotions. You want to run away. You want to shut down. What do you have to do? It's like, shit, you got to lean in. You don't get to run away. If you need to run away and isolate, it's like, you're on timer, 5 minutes. And then after that, you actually have to come and share your emotions. Sucks to suck, right? That's something that you'd have to hold yourself accountable to. Oh, my knee jerk. Oh, I gotta come this way instead. Okay. Oh, I want to be alone and I want to dissociate into video games. Oh, I need to talk to my friend instead. Right? Whatever it is that you are dealing with in conflict. And then for the disorganized people in here, you are going to have to be responsible to say, okay, I have left my window of tolerance. I am totally triggered right now. I have to regulate my emotions. And I'm going to have to catch myself from self-sabotaging patterns, which is exactly what I outlined to you guys before. Okay. Now, the reason that I do what I do is because I would severely suffer if I didn't have tools. Okay. So, like, do not think that I woke up one day and was like, I'm having these issues. I should just totally go against my natural intuition and just lean in, just challenge myself to do all these hard things, and then I was successful, right? I sound like positive Care Bear. Fix everything, Care Bear. It doesn't work that way. It has taken a lot of meditation and breath work. Like, oh my God, breath work's like a staple in my household when like either of us are activated. It's like we're taking time and we're breathing until we are regulated enough to somehow engage. And if that level goes anywhere again, it's like, no, team break, back to the breath work, right? Like we have to use these tools to allow ourselves to do something uncomfortable. In the scenario that I gave you where I want to withdraw and like punish and then pull back and then push away again and like cause chaos. Do you guys think that I'm just sitting and then reach out and hold my husband's hand and I'm smiling, being like, this was the best decision ever? This feels so good. It's like, no. When I reach and I hold his hand, I might still be absolutely seething inside and wanting to run in the other direction and scream like a banshee, right? But instead, I might sit there and actually meditate while I hold his hand and close my eyes, right? Because that's healing myself of saying you can connect still even when you feel chaos, right? You don't have to punish even when you feel chaos. And someone else's needs are met at the same time, where it's like, okay, they want to be connected and seen and loved and heard as well, right? Again, same thing applies to a friend. Staying in conversation with them when it's uncomfortable for you and being like, I don't want them to feel abandoned either. We both want to feel connection. I have to stay engaged in this, even though I want to run. I might have to breathe to stop myself from running. Or if you are a disorganized attached, and someone's like criticizing you and you want to just sob, it's like you need to still be able to sit there and receive the words without turning it into something more. You have to sit and maybe breathe, right? For those of you that are anxious attached, getting connected with nature and walking is unbelievable, right? Or even if you're like, I would actually apply that to any category, right? If you're a runner and you want to run away and you don't want to engage in a conversation at a time because it's like making you uncomfortable, it's like, so go on a walk, go on an hour walk. And when you get back, you actually are im implored to have that conversation. You must, it's mandatory, right? But you had that moment to get your nervous system going, being like, okay, I'm escaping, I'm walking. I come back, I now have to engage. I did that for me. I did that for my nervous system. I recognized that maybe the ways I was feeling at that time were not actually as clear as they needed to be. Okay. And now that I've taken a moment to step back and watch my patterns and watched what it is that I'm doing there, I can now salvage this and move into repair. Okay. So meditation, huge. Breath work, humongous. Yoga, nature, walking. These things need to be either a part of your mental health plan that you're implementing all the time, or they need to be something that when you're like, shit, I'm triggered, that it's something that you bring in and do, right? Sometimes when I'm like totally like, I'm like, I don't know what the right answer is. I don't know how to settle. I don't know what it is that I need. Like that doesn't happen now, but it did happen before I started working on myself. It's like, so I'd plop down and sit on my ass. And it wasn't about thinking through the problem cognitively. It was sitting there being like, hmm, I can be introspective in this space. I can de-intensify my nervous system right now by sitting and breathing, maybe for 10 minutes. And then I can have an opportunity to maybe think a little differently. I don't have to change my mind entirely. I don't have to flip-flop to the other side. I just have to say, okay, Now I have the opportunity and space to maybe potentially add something new to this framework, this scaffold, this worldview that I have. Maybe there's a different way. Maybe there's possibility that I could be wrong about something. Okay. And you heard me mention before, I think quickly, if I said it in my list about the tools to use, identifying cognitive distortions. Okay. In the context of your attachment wounds and using your illogical brain, that often requires tools like thoughts on trial. And I work on that with my patients in Peace of Mind Method when I'm working with them in the program setting. And the reason that I love this activity is because it neutralizes a thought. Okay. It gives you the space, like I just said before, to consider an alternate fact or truth or belief. It doesn't mean that coming up with this new information changes your mind. It means that you're becoming more flexible to the idea of you being wrong, right? Because when you're activated and you're angry, the way that you see it is right, right? Like you guys think that you're right from your perspective. Not many of you are like looking like, yeah, you can see it from the other person's side, but you're like, I'm right, right? And then you like ask other people to confirm your belief. Yeah. So this is going to allow you to become more flexible to those ideas, okay? And this happens very well in my professional opinion when you have that strong doctor-patient relationship. Like I get to offer my patients an idea, and because we have a good relationship, I say, okay, let's talk about the ways that you might be wrong, right? Because when we're talking about this and we're de-intensified and we're regulated, you might be able to come up with some really good ideas, or you might be able to hear me. You're not going to hear it from your friend or your family member or your partner when you're in that state, but you might consider it if I bring it up, right? And I have a lot of patients in here tonight that'll be like, that does happen. And that's why I love talking to, in a professional setting. And that can do a lot of good things. Now, the core beliefs that I mentioned earlier, these are super important to know. But refuting them with evidence, it can become a sticky situation. And I did mention that a little bit earlier. That's why I like this real-time behavioral change. It allows for this emotional processing as you live out that real experience. So you write down the narrative of what your attachment style is saying when you're in the emotional dysregulation, when you're triggered, because that's what you believe at the foundational level. And then you can come back to it later when you've regulated yourself. And this is my favorite part, so that you can identify those thoughts, feelings, worldview, beliefs, whatever, as a lie. Okay. And I don't mean to gaslight yourself. I mean, you can objectively look at that and be like, that's not true. That's what it felt like at the time, but that is not fucking true. And this process streamlined my attachment issues the fastest. Was being able to identify, like, I have this very strong feeling, and then logically, as I'm feeling it, being like, there is no point in spiraling and having behavioral and actions and next steps from here, because, like, you already know from the shortcut in your mind that that's a freaking lie. So you don't have to believe it. You can feel it, you can process it, you can go straight to your breath work, go for your walk, do your workout, do your yoga, go through a meditation. You can do all that to actually regulate your nervous system back to the place where you're like, whoa, that was an overwhelming, chaotic feeling of cortisol flooding through my system. But that didn't mean that I have to do that thing that I always do, because it's not true. It's a wound. And just because someone's sticking their finger in it and twisting it and poking and prodding at it, it doesn't mean that it's the truth. Okay? So you've all heard the statement, like, you're not your thoughts, right? You've heard that? I'm gonna even add into that you are not your emotions. So both your thoughts and emotions in this heightened state of being in your attachment wounds, they're just liars, okay? There might be some truth to them, and I'm sure you could find proof as to why you're feeling the way you're feeling, okay? But you can also find evidence of the alternative, which would make it not an absolute truth, okay? I hope that landed with you. It would be a potential option. That feeling is possible. It might be an option. But these thoughts are also here at the same time, so maybe that's an option too. So you don't have to buy in 100% to what you're feeling, Okay. That gives a lot of space for neuroplasticity and eventually changing your worldviews and buying into your bullshit that you're selling. That's all happening like when you're the most dysregulated. Okay. When you're regulated, your brain's more neuroplastic, which means that you're more capable of having those thoughts to challenge your beliefs. And if you can do this work to get you into a window or a state when you're capable and able to consider that you might be wrong about something, that's the key to changing your mind. Because then you're not constantly searching for confirmation bias, but you're willing to disprove your working theories of how you see the world. And this is like literally chef's kiss of how you heal things. It's the willingness to be wrong instead of just buying into everything you feel all the time. Okay. Let's use this as an example. I'm not safe. Okay. We've all felt that before, right? hmm So let's say that's the core belief. I'm not safe. I want you to find proof for when you, okay. Can we do this live? Will you do this with me? Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, thumbs flying on the screen. Yeah, okay. So I want you to think in your mind of a time where you are not safe, whether that be in friendship, in romantic relationship, in familiar relationship, in childhood, whatever. Now, I want you right now to find proof, three things. Proof of where you feel safe or where you have felt safe by facts and by memory. So whether that be another relationship, whether it be some of the things you've done today, okay? Let's say you've locked and loaded one. Maybe you've locked and loaded three because it felt easy for you, okay? That might not be enough because you might not believe it. And we're now working through live what I said to you guys earlier, right? You might be like, okay, well, the time that I felt unsafe was like way more intense than the time that I did feel safe. So, like, I still feel unsafe, right? And that's often the case. So, I want you to ask yourself, when I feel unsafe, what do I do? What are my actions? What are some of the actions that you partake in when you feel unsafe? Maybe you seek out reassurance. Maybe you self-isolate. Maybe you self-abandon. You punish or blame other people. Maybe you overshare, justify your point of view. Maybe you ignore, maybe you stonewall, whatever it is. When you feel unsafe, this is the action that you do. That will be your knee-jerk reaction, okay? Now you're not allowed to do that thing. Some of you were like, okay? You're going to have to rely on the tools to stop yourself from doing that thing. Because you're going to want to do it real badly. And you're going to want to bargain with yourself. There are times where like, especially because of my disorganized attachment style, where it's like I will go in and out of it. It'll be like 5 minutes, I'll be like, okay, I'm good, I got this. And then I'll go to do it and I'll be like, nah, I can't. And then it's like I'm battling with myself back and forth. And it happens, right? That's why you need the tools. Sometimes I'll be doing like 5 minutes of breath work and then I'm like, okay, I'm regulated, I'm fine. And then I go back into it and it's like straight back up again. I'm like, fuck. And I have to like dismiss myself to continue processing, right? And that's where these tools become very spectacular, right? And then when you shit the bed, it's like, well, that was one time, I got to try it again. And I got to do it again and again and again and again and again. And it's the repetition of doing this over and over and over again, maybe to like 80% of the times that you're triggered. You don't have to be 100% perfect. Like you're allowed to be bad 20% of the time and be like, oops, did that. Healing's hard. I also have a job and I have chores to do and I have a life to live. Like I can't constantly be on healing duty, right? You're going to slip up. Everyone's got a certain level of stress that we have to still attend to every single day. Can't be so great all the time. But you have to give it that like concerted effort of, wow, I'm tired and I don't want to do this, but I'm still going to do it because what I'm choosing at the end of the day is connection. What I'm choosing is to heal these, attachment wounds. I don't want to live with this attachment style. It's stressful enough. It's making me feel extra pain. It's making my relationship struggle and suffer. It's making my anxiety and depression worse. I'm having worse symptoms because of it. I'm isolating. I'm staying in bed. I don't have enough energy, right? A lot of us forget how there's this massive connecting piece between having these relationships in our lives, which is like who you are conducting yourself with on a daily basis. You think that that doesn't impact your physical symptoms? Having heart palpitations, having shortness of breath, having digestive issues, having headaches, having body pain, being tired, having brain fog, lack of focus. Like this is all interconnected and related. And if you are someone who has an attachment wound and attachment style issues, and you're not attending to them, and you're telling me that you're working on your mental health, it's like, aren't you missing a big part of the picture? Aren't we missing places that's like, it's almost like missing the amount of sugar you eat in a day or not paying attention to the amount of water you drink. It's like your relationships are that prevalent in your life. And if every single time you're interacting with someone, there is potential for your attachment style to be present in the room, it's like that's a lot of cortisol. It's a lot of pressure in the system. It's a lot of additional stress that you could be working on and you could be changing and shifting. And that's why, like, every time I work with my patients, it's not just, ah, you got physical symptoms, let's just focus on the nervous system. It's like, that's one piece is the pillars. And then we have to pay attention to the clutter in your life. I had a patient yesterday that couldn't organize herself, and I said, what are the things that plague you? Like in the quiet hours of the night in the morning, or like when you're daydreaming and you're driving and you're listening to music, like, what are the pain what are the things that you're thinking about? What do you feel? The future? What are you worried about? What are the things that you're unsatisfied with? It's like there's so much of the in between in this. And like, I don't know many people who have anxiety and depression without having attachment wounds. These things kind of go hand in hand. And that's why it's such a big part of what I do when I work with my patients, especially in Peace of Mind Method. Like we're learning tools on the program side of things, but like group calls are like heavy, heavy on this type of stuff because it's how we operate in our general day-to-day life, right? We can't heal ourselves in a vacuum. We have to pay attention to how we use these tools in order to change our experience of our life. And that's why we're doing this work, is to actually feel peace, is to actually feel happy, is to actually feel connected. And if you're not willing to do that because it's too scary, it's like, okay, so keep eating healthy. Okay, so keep training for that marathon. Okay, so like keep doing whatever it is that you do that makes you feel healthy without paying attention to the massive elephant in the room. So this is why it becomes a staple when I work with people is we have to pay attention to how we show up in relationship and where this insidious stuff is happening in the background, okay? More importantly than all of this, this is lifetime work. You can't change this in 21 days. I hear this online. It takes 21 days to change a neural pathway. It's like, okay, it takes 21 days to build a new habit. Is that changing a neural pathway? Yeah, we can form a new one. Do you know how long it takes to solidify one? It's like, okay, it takes maybe 3 of those neural pathways to make it a reasonable option that we can consider it. God, do you know how long it takes to like get good at this? I'd be surprised if you can perfect this in a lifetime. And quite frankly, your attachment wounds and your core beliefs, they don't go anywhere. Like when you're triggered and you're outside of window of tolerance, you're going to see these come up again, no matter how much you've worked on them, no matter how healed you are, even if it's like a small voice in the back or it's on your shoulder. It's like, you're going to hear it. Obviously, I know I'm good enough. I know I'm good enough for all the evidence in the world and for all the ways in which I exist and through all the feedback I get from people in my life. Still there, right? It's never going anywhere. And that is where a lot of my patients get irritated and frustrated and think they're not healing because they want this to disappear. They want to get rid of this part of themselves. You can't. I can't rip out an organ and be like, still survive, still function. It's not like we're taking out a singular kidney, right? We're taking out an entire core functioning organ that is operating in every cell that you own. Okay. So you need to remember that this is lifetime work. It's about consistently showing up. It's about having the compassion for yourself. It's about having the curiosity and wanting to be vulnerable to create these changes and having fun as you do it and not beating yourself up along the way when you are imperfect. Okay. And like I said earlier, it's not about making everything so convenient for you that it's easy to heal. Like we need to be able to experience stress and chaos as a human being. Like life is full of this, and we need to have that tolerance and that capacity to be able to hold space for bad things happening. That's what makes us human being, and that's what makes us really good at healing, right? It is a process. It is a consistent thing that you show up to do. And it becomes a part of who you are, is wanting to do this work. Okay. So I just wanted you to understand it's all part of the process and you don't get to skip it. And you don't get to buy into people's bullshit where they say, well, if you heal this, then you'll heal your relationships after this. It's like, no, you're going to be showing up for the rest of your life and you will get better. Look at my results. When I first did this style of like quiz and assessment, I think the first time I did it was in 2016 in like a real way, and probably prior to that it was like maybe 2013. My results were very different. Okay, so there's been a lot of change that is now showing up clinically, and I think that that's important for you guys to see, is that when you start putting in the work you are going to see these things change because your worldview is changing. You are taking the scaffold and opening it up and adding new things in. It's kind of like Inside Out with the memories, right? We're adding new things and it's allowing you to see the world differently. And if we can do that slowly over time, you are going to be a much more secure, attached individual. And there is a lot of room for growth. And we cannot strive for perfection. We can only strive for change. Okay. So I will leave that there with you tonight. I'm going to leave you some links in the chat right now if you are someone who wants to learn about meditation, because I talked about that skill quite a bit tonight. You can grab that link there. If you are someone who wants to learn more about breath work, you can grab that second link that I just put there. If you're someone who's into more of the somatic style of healing and processing your emotions and reducing the intensity of your overwhelm through physical movement, I would suggest the emotional processing mini course there. And if you are someone who's like, I need the whole caboodle, I need to do all of the things. I need to work on myself. I need to organize myself. I need to have a better plan of how I approach myself, my mental health, my anxiety, my depression, my symptoms, my life, my relationships, everything. I'm going to leave the link to book a call with me, okay? So that we can talk further and see what's going to be the right choice for you. I will keep the live going for a few more minutes. If you are someone who wants to check out those links, you can screenshot them, you can copy and paste them, you can go open up all the tabs right now. I will leave the live on, like I said, so that you don't lose access to those. And I will also open up the floor for Q&A. Does anyone have any questions that they want to ask me? I tried to keep my eye on what was going on in the chat, but it is hard. It is hard to multitask. If you have a question and you want to drop it in the chat, you can do that. If you want to put it in the Q&A, you can do that. And for those of you that are ready to go to bed, you go do that too. For those of you in Australia, good morning. Welcome to your day. You have lots to think about today. The rest of you are tossing and turning tonight, being like, I need to do some homework this week. And that is where I want you. If you are someone who would rather have these questions answered in private, you know where to find me. I'm going to leave my Instagram handle in the chat as well. You can always send me a DM there. You can send me a message on Facebook. And I will be posting this replay tomorrow. So if you want to watch it again, you'll have that link to save. And yes, if any questions come up, email me, send me a message, and I will answer as quick as I can. All right? All right, everyone, have a lovely night. And if Maria's going, lots of things to process. If processing happens tomorrow and you need to send me a message, I'll be there, okay? Thank you all for joining me live. This was lots of fun for me to get out and to organize my thoughts on this topic. I absolutely love this topic. I could probably run 500 lives on it. So thanks for joining me, and I will see you guys soon.